Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast, ripping up everything off that. Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. We are back for another fantastic episode, guys. We are three short days away from the NFL season officially kicking off with the Hall of Fame game this coming Thursday. We are back in gear, guys. Of course, we have Coach Tyler on the show. Brother, what's going on, my friend?
Going on, guys. We finally made it. Excited to get back into it, man.
Absolutely. It's a very exciting time of year right now. This is probably one of my favorite times, even though the summer is going to be going away from Jersey. It's football season in my eyes, so I love it.
The summer will still be here in Texas, so it's okay.
Well, you got a little bit luckier than I do. And, of course, we have our guest on today's show, Kyle Senera. How are you, my friend? Welcome back into the show.
Coach Steve, Coach Tyler, great to be back. Consulting with the Fantasy Coaches. And, football season. It's always weird for me to say football season is back. As a Canadian, I love the CFL, so regular season starts in June. So, watched a game last night. It was the end of week 8. So, this is – now both sports will be happening. So, full football, no matter what day of the week it is.
Hey, I love it. Don't get me wrong, I love it. So, hey, as long as you guys, if you can enjoy football all year round, or at least since June, props to you, my friend. I love it. Today's episode, guys, we are doing floor versus upside, up-ceiling players, upside players that they're going to give you. They could win you a week in any single week, and then we have some floor players who, again, they're going to be consistent players on your fantasy teams that. Yeah, maybe they're not putting up 30 fantasy points in a game to help you win your week, but they're going to be part of the overall team to kind of help you overall as a floor player. So we got 3 for each of them. Each one of us have a player, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I wanted to start the episode with another big signing this offseason that was a bit interesting for sure. And it's Courtland Sutton signing a new deal with the Denver Broncos. I believe he's either 28 or 29 years old already. Lands a 4-year, $92 million deal. Now, I think it got ranked 17th among the wide receiver paid right now. But again, definitely a big thing. I'm sure the Commanders are watching this shit right now, saying shit. But yeah, Courtland Sutton, a guy who I don't think many people probably were like, oh, he's a big-time wide receiver, but he's had decent play at times, especially last year was one of his better seasons, obviously. But how do you guys take Courtland Sutton? And again, we're going to wind us back into more of a dynasty aspect right now. Kyle, I'll kind of let you start first. How does him signing this deal look to you for dynasty? Confidence in him, or?
I mean, I think, unfortunately, because of his age, he was already going to be down in a tier. I just updated my dynasty rankings recently. Also, just recently put out my redraft rankings. My wide receiver 43. I'd done this before today's signing announcement and looking who I have immediately ahead of him. Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams. He's kind of in that tier with all of them. You're almost making one-year bets. I think the reason I have him behind is because I could imagine all those other guys outscoring him this year. So I still think, even in a dynasty perspective, he might be in the age where you're still thinking of him as what can you do for me on a 1 year-to-year basis? Now, this probably gives you a longer leeway of he's going to have this many productive seasons. So he's someone where if you have him, maybe it's just the confidence to hold him. Because I don't know that this necessarily ups his trade value that much either. He's a 29, 30-year-old wide receiver? Probably not getting full price that you should for him. Certainly not this time. Really didn't want to trade him off this extension with the thought of there is some long-term value. It's probably better to do it in season, but then again, once he's scoring in points in season, it's tough to move on from him. Jamie's comment, trying to buy Sutton for a second. As a contender, he should be someone you're really trying to buy. So if you have him, maybe it's just you don't have to panic sell because you feel like, okay, I've got many seasons. He's not a dying asset in a year or two. Entering the last year of his contract, okay, on a nice roll in this offense with Bo Nix, but he goes somewhere else, that's not necessarily the case. So there's, I guess, predictability with him. So I kind of like Jamie's idea of trying to go out and buy him if you can cheaply. 26 seconds, you guys think that's a good buying price or selling price?
Yeah, I like that for a good buying price. I think this speaks more to, or it really doesn't boost Sutton more as much as it kind of gives us some assurance with Bo Nix going into the next couple of years. Not that I would call Cortland Sutton, the alpha receiver that Bo Nix needs for his career, but it locks in a number one for him over the next couple of years. They bring in R.J. Harvey, brought in J.K. Dobbins, so they're trying to get that running game really shored up. And bring in Evan Engram as another weapon in the passing game. They're starting to build the offense around Nix, and we saw, especially for fantasy, a very successful rookie season. And so being able to lock down, his top target while bringing in a hyper efficient tight end in terms of, just little dump offs and getting those quick routes out, on top of hopefully building a run game between R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins, I think it bodes the highest for Bo Nix in terms of just kind of locking stuff up and helping him to take that next step and not necessarily fall into a sophomore slump, but give him all the tools to, jump higher than, lower in QB1 than what we saw this past year.
Great point.
Yes, definitely a good point on that. And let me ask you guys just like a little like this or that kind of thing. Obviously, probably you'd assume maybe 2 more years for Cortland Sutton, depending on how things go. Maybe 3 if he gets out of that contract. He probably isn't going to play all 4 years. Obviously, he's a little bit older of a wide receiver there. But I'm trying to think of wide receivers right now. Like, would you trade away Mike Evans to take Cortland Sutton, assuming that maybe you have maybe 2 or 3 more years with him, and maybe Mike Evans doesn't have that? Assuming they could have similar production this year, maybe obviously Mike Evans has a little bit more upside for this season, but
yeah, if I'm a contender, I almost want to stick with Mike Evans just because I know that the passing volume is going to be there a little bit more than it will be in Denver. They have the running back room not necessarily figured out, but they've got 2, fairly good mouths to feed. Spent that 2nd round pick on R.J. Harvey and then went out and got J.K. Dobbins in free agency. And that the Buccaneers are going to sling it, right? That's why they have Baker. That's why they went out and got Igbuka. That's why they have the weapons that they have. They're going to throw the ball. It's still a Liam Cohen guy running the show there for the offense. So I don't see too many changes from last year. I think if he's your wide receiver 1 on a contending team, then maybe you try and, elongate that window of being able to compete. But I think I'd take Mike Evans over Sutton in that just for the sheer volume that he should be getting.
How I have it ranked, but as you said, as a contender, you definitely want to. To your point, Steve, as a rebuilder, you might be interested in doing that, just thinking that if I'm trying to sell one, probably have a longer window to be able to sell Sutton. Whereas Evans, it's really the sell window is if he smashes week 1, just sell him immediately if you're a rebuilder, right? Like if you don't want him, do it as soon as you can. Now, if he doesn't have a great week 1, is that you run the risk, right? Do I wait for a smash week, or do you just do it because a contender is trying to buy him anyway? So it's definitely. I think the problem is if you're a rebuilder, you don't really think you're solving your problem going from Evans to Sutton. You still have an older wide receiver that isn't really. It's not as flexible an asset. I think you just have a longer track window to meet.
That's fair. And Jamie has a question in the chat there. Would you guys trade Jayden Higgins for Cortland Sutton as a contender?
As the Texans fan in the room, I say no. If you just look at kind of what's been going on with the Texans backfield and training camp, Joe Mixon popped up with a walking boot in OTAs, just kind of out of nowhere, said that there was some stuff going on with his foot. And he was supposed to be back and ready for training camp, and now he's nowhere to be found, and they're going to ease him in, and he's on the PUP and all these different things. And then you have, Nick Chubb, who you're hoping is coming back from a horrific knee injury at like 28, 29 years old. And then Dameon Pierce. The Texans aren't going to be able to run the ball.
Sounds like a no to me.
Yeah, Texans aren't going to be able to run the ball. And sadly, Nico Collins can't get all the targets. So I like Jayden Higgins. They're going to play him on the outside. I think that Nick Caley coming in is going to bode very well for the offensive scheme and especially the passing game. And I know CJ is going to, be efficient. And so I honestly kind of like Higgins as much as I like Sutton. He's not going to be the number one target getter in the offense, but this wouldn't surprise me if the Texans were top 5 in attempts this next season.
I think Higgins is someone that you could probably be able to trade, even, and especially if he does really well this season, kind of for a lot of different players. But again, like when it's Sutton, you're really limiting yourself. It's the outcome of, okay, he's going to outscore Higgins by that much that it's worth it to lose all that dynasty value. That could be the case. Rookies could tend to start out slow. But imagine if Higgins is there's a world, I don't think it's likely, but there's a world where Higgins outscores Sutton this year. We don't know that for sure that it won't happen. So I think just the mystery box risk of that, I guess, I wouldn't want to take that. And I'm thinking, is Sutton the best outcome to go with if you're a true contender? The guy I really like that I think is even older, I don't know if he's that much more valuable in Dynasty, is Davante Adams. He's like the one, I think, true win-now player that you think he'll score on the Rams so many points that it won't even matter about what you lose Dynasty value, like the true type league winner. I don't think Sutton, I think what we saw last year is repeatable. I don't know that he can necessarily push that much higher, especially with Engram there, because I think those are going to be the top 2 targets on the team, but suddenly you don't have this like tremendous, it's all going to go to Cortland Sutton. Right. They might help each other too, so which I think is why what Sutton did last year is repeatable again, but I think Adams has proven his ceiling is much higher. So if you're really looking for those win now type receivers, I think Adams is the number one guy you go look for first. Okay. Tyreek Hill might be the second, and I think he's coming off a really bad year where like those are the two that I think their range of outcomes are so high that I'm thinking pure win now receivers. Those are the 2 names I want.
Kyle's giving us a little sneak peek in today's episode. I love it. Jamie, also
yeah,
McLaurin, Terry, or Sutton right now, and maybe more just like this season. Maybe Dynasty too, however you guys want to spin it.
McLaurin in both. I mean, I've got him projected higher and Sutton higher, but there's, risk right now of him holding out, right? If he misses games, then yeah, I have them a lot high. I feel like I might have McLaurin too high because he's my wide receiver 28 right now in Dynasty. I don't know. Maybe that's. I do need to kind of rethink that, and Jamie's making me think of that by posing this question.
Yeah, I think if McLaurin plays every game, I think that Sutton's ceiling is McLaurin's floor. So, in an episode where we're going to talk about upside and ceilings and floors, I would rather have the guy whose floor is the other player's ceiling. Because I know that at a minimum.
Similar stats last year, literally. Yeah. Similar stats, but McLaurin obviously scored a few more touchdowns.
Yeah. I feel like, kind of like Kyle said, Sutton probably isn't going to get an insane boost in volume. There may be another touchdown or 2 that ends up in there, or a couple throws that Nix didn't make as a rookie that he hits, a couple chunk plays. But I feel like as I look at it, they're both similar age players. I just think that really McLaurin's floor is Sutton's ceiling, and so I'd rather take the player who, if he signs a contract and he's playing every game, who I can have that is going to, at a minimum, do what I'm hoping Sutton can do.
To your point, Tyler, what McLaurin did last year is essentially what he's done his whole career. It's just he had more touchdowns, but we also, why did he have more touchdowns? He had a way better quarterback. So, McLaurin, he's so predictable in terms of like where his finishes are, and he was someone who was underperforming his touchdown numbers to his yards. He's always a great yards accumulator. Should have had a lot more touchdowns than he did in those early portions of his career. So now this was the Coach Kyle. If only I was really a coach, but yeah, you can if you want, Judge Jamie. I don't think it finally swung back to where it should have been. So while we think, okay, McLaurin's naturally going to regress in touchdowns, it might not be by that much.
Yeah.
I think Bo Nix did incredible last year, but I still think Jayden Daniels is better. And so I think that will also, that's a reason why. Like, they're just tied to that better quarterback. Now, we just hope he gets that long-term extension, and he can really be tied to it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on from the news, guys. So if you haven't heard, Cortland Sutton signed a nice 4-year deal, so congrats to him. But let's get into our episode today, guys. Like I said, we are doing ceiling versus floor players today, starting off with the ceiling plays. And Kyle, we'll start off with yours. And you gave me two, so I went with the first one because I'm a Dolphins fan, and you didn't give me another one. So, Tyreek Hill is your ceiling play here for 2025. But why is he a ceiling play?
So this will tie in really well to what we're doing at Fantasy Six Pack right now. So I started writing for it last year, and the first two articles of this 12-part series have dropped already. I'm not responsible for all of it, but we're doing a pick slot draft strategy for each draft slot. So the 101 strategies, who are in ADPs, players you're looking at the 101, but then 212, 301, who are players to look for there, and building strategies for each of those draft slots. I had the 106, the 109, and the 112, and those should all drop shortly here at the end of July, early August. And my 109 article, I said the whole strategy was based on one thing we love to do in fantasy football: go for those safe early first-round picks, right? You don't want to bust on your first-round pick, but what if you push the risk to the maximum, but also the upside? What if you went with high risk, high upside super early? And if, let's say, a first-round pick from the 109, your safe pick is Malik Neighbors or Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Like what Malik Neighbors got from a target share perspective last year, incredible. And Amon-Ra, how many catches he gets every year. Like, those are repeatable things that we think just create safe fantasy floors weekly and yearly. Those are probably the safest picks to make at 109 if one of them's there. The riskiest pick, though, are the running backs in that spot. Ashton Genty or Christian McCaffrey. I mean, that risk to the max on McCaffrey. But if he stays healthy for most of a year and gets you that true RB1 week winning type of upside, like, that's worth that risk. So you make the McCaffrey pick instead of the Neighbors pick. You go full upside. You take, we'll go with another Dolphin, Achane or Jonathan Taylor. You go with those guys again instead of the safe wide receiver picks of like London or McConkey that we saw, or AJ Brown, like kind of in that range. And then my third pick in that article was Tyreek Hill, the pure upside shot. If you can get Tyreek Hill as a third-round pick, late third, in this strategy article, that's where he ended up being kind of around an ADP. I mean, that's the kind of upside that can truly win you. Because where did we have Hill last year? I know I ranked him as my wide receiver one for redraft in 2024. Obviously, that was wrong. I make a lot of mistakes at times, but it wasn't that rare of a thing to see where, you know, if you were worried about McCaffrey's injury last year, it wouldn't have shocked me to see Tyreek Hill be the 101, for instance. And so with Hill, I mean, it was one bad season, but do we really think it's I guess the risk of the risk reward part of it is that he is on the decline. Like, last year is what he is as the new Tyreek Hill, or could last year have just been an injury riddled year? I know he mentioned he had a wrist injury for most of the season. I think he dealt with other things as well. Could that just be a fluke and he returns to that close to wide receiver one upside, leading the league in receiving yards? Like, if that's still there for him, you can now get him in the third round. Maybe as, again, if you've built heavy running back as your wide receiver one, or if you've gone, I think I did another strategy article, 3 wide receivers like CeeDee Lamb, Lad McConkey, Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's crazy good floor and upside combination. Tyreek is a really interesting upside pick. I would have said Adams, but it feels like Adams is going a little bit earlier. Like, he's more clearly a second-round pick. You can get Tyreek Hill in the third round after having 2 solid players. That's tremendous upside. That's where you really want to start taking this.
Yeah,
he could be the ultimate boom-bust risk-reward upside pick if you can get him in the third round. So Tyreek Hill's my pick.
No, I like that, because if you look at the running backs, the wide receivers at least going in that round 3 range, you're looking at Ladd, you're looking at JSN, you're looking at T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson. While they all are really strong players, I think you could look at it and say, oh wow, Tyreek Hill, could he still be wide receiver 1? Absolutely, still. Absolutely, that upside is there for that. The rest of them, in my opinion, I would be more shocked if any one of them actually finished as a wide receiver, not a wide receiver 1, but as let's say a top 3 wide receiver, maybe T. Higgins. But, like, I don't see any of them actually finishing as a top 3 wide receiver. And I think you're right, Kyle. I think Tyreek Hill has that upside play that makes him a top 3 wide receiver. But the downside is, obviously, we don't know what happens with Tua. That whole offense could fall apart in week 4, and then Tyreek Hill becomes a barely flex play most weeks. So
we thought the Tyler Huntley offense was bad. Imagine Zach Wilson getting out there. Oh boy.
I hope they put Quinn out there. Throw Quinn out there.
Oh yeah, right. Quinn Ewers, right? Yeah. He might be more pro ready than Zach Wilson. Yes.
Probably. Coach Tyler, anything to add on Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, I think you said it best when you said he's a boom bust. I feel like Tyreek Hill last year, his target numbers were just so hampered by his injury and kind of a change in the offense, right? Not Mike McDonald.
McDaniel?
Mike McDaniel. Is it Mike McDaniel?
Yeah, Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel. There's too many Mike.
There's a Mike McDonald. It's the Seahawks head coach.
Okay, yeah. Mike McDaniel. I feel like last year he just switched up the offense so much to, a lot of dink and dunk, and that just wasn't what they were using Tyreek Hill to do. I feel like if you watch last year, even with a wrist injury, right, Tyreek didn't lose his speed. He didn't lose his shiftiness. He didn't lose the things that he was good at. They just weren't taking shots. Tua was hurt for like a quarter of the season. So you were putting Tyler Huntley out there, a former Pro Bowler, but I don't think he's the guy to get the ball to Tyreek Hill. Like I see the ceiling. I just feel like there's so many variables around him that almost make me scared of the boom bust. Like you said, like I'm a very big, I want consistency. I want an Amon-Ra St. Brown type guy early in my draft. I want that to be what I base my team off of. And then, maybe not round 3, but like round 7, 8, I'm starting to take those dart throws of ceiling. So Tyreek Hill is honestly someone that I'm kind of scared off of, not because of his ability at all. He still does all the things that he's done well forever. Great. I think it's just the changing of the offense. And then obviously, you hate to talk about it every offseason, but Tua is still a liability to get injured, still a liability to get hurt. Yeah. And we've seen what the offense looks like with him gone. And so I definitely see the ceiling, and he is definitely, like y'all said, in that range of players that he's the only one that I could see being a top 3 receiver. And it's really because he's the only one that has been, not just once, but in a multiplicity in the past. But at the same time, I'm kind of scared that there's so many factors outside of just him that I might not want to play the ceiling.
That's fair. Yeah, there's a lot of factors with Tyreek Hill, but you take the boom and the bust as it comes with him. So.
And the floor versus upside episode, I think Jackson Smith and Jake, but Garrett Wilson versus Tyreek in that 3rd round. I think you named them perfectly, Steve. That's where those floor versus upside debates you as a manager might have to have in fantasy drafts.
And sure. I think it will depend on what you take in those first 2 rounds. If you feel like you have safe enough players that, like, all right, now I can take a risk, where maybe you took more risk early on, like taking Christian McCaffrey, and I can't even think of somebody in round 2 at the moment. I don't know, Brian Thomas, maybe. I don't know. Depends how you feel about the Jags.
If you think tight ends are risky, like Brock Bowers.
You take Brock Bowers, Christian McCaffrey, you go JSN then. Maybe you get, I can't think, Justin Jefferson, and you get Jonathan Taylor in round 2, and then, all right, round 3, like, why not take Tyreek Hill? Why not take that upside? So it all depends on what your draft strategy is, but he is a ceiling play. All right, going over to Coach Tyler's first player, Tetairoa McMillan, the wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers here. Coach Tyler, tell us why he is a ceiling play for you.
Yeah, he's a rookie, and it's insane to me to have this guy who all, draft cycle, everyone was trying to tear down, right? He's not fast enough to be a top 10 pick, right? He's going to be projected to the Panthers or the Raiders or this or that team in the top 10, but, he just doesn't have the analytical profile. He doesn't have the speed. He's not, shifty enough because he's 6'4", or whatever it is, right? And then the Panthers front office just shut everyone up and said, hey, he's our number 8 overall pick. Like, this is the guy. And there's a bunch from his college profile that I really love. I'm a Texas Tech guy, Big 12 fan. We love to see the air raid offense inside, right? But I think so much more of what the Panthers are going to look like as propping McMillan up, right? You have him right there. His ADP is around round 6. So if you've done, if you're 2 running back, 2 receiver, and a tight end in your first 5 rounds, and you're looking, am I looking at a quarterback or am I looking at a flex? McMillan has so much opportunity in front of him in a very, I guess you could say, questionable wide receiver room, right? Xavier Legette obviously didn't live up to the hopes that he was supposed to last year, and McMillan kind of fills the role that he was playing. So Legette hopefully moves back to, an X receiver role that he could play better. You have Jalen Coker, who showed flashes. You have, 48-year-old Adam Thielen. But I look at the Panthers, and Canales is, supposed to be this quarterback whisperer, right? He's supposed to be a guy that loves to throw the ball. If we look back to Bryce Young's rookie season, the Panthers were 13th in the league in pass attempts, right? And obviously last year, Bryce was dealing with injuries, up and down, everything. If you average out, the games that he played in their entirety, he averaged 31 pass attempts a game. Extrapolated over 17 games, he averaged 531 pass attempts on his own. Obviously, with his injury and, a kind of up and down offense, they did turn to Chuba Hubbard starting to, play a lot better and break out. But if we look at the offense, right, we talk about, ancient Adam Thielen. He was a wide receiver 2 a couple years ago at 32 years old with the same rookie Bryce Young, who, we've seen take steps, or at least through the end of last year, right? And we see McMillan as, I get that Bryce Young is 5'10". If you can't see a 6'4" Tetairoa McMillan running down the field, you might not be cut out to play quarterback. Maybe you're just like an all-pro holder or something.
Oh, gosh.
But I see McMillan as, an alpha receiver. I see him as the alpha receiver for the Panthers. That's why they went out and spent a top 10 pick on the guy. And if we're being real, I was a big Travis Hunter as the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty drafts guy. The more we're seeing out of camp, which it's not everything, but the more we're seeing out of camp, Travis Hunter's getting a lot of defensive snaps, which means there's a chance he's not playing as much on offense as we want. There's a very high chance that McMillan is, and honestly should be, the wide receiver 1 of this rookie class. But there's a very high chance that he is, at minimum, a low-end wide receiver 2 off of sheer volume, right? And they're going to want to stretch the field. He's going to be able to bust off chunk plays like he was doing at Arizona. And I think that he just has some things that are almost unguardable, right? It's very hard to beat him on a jump ball. It's very hard to beat him down the field, right? And he has the speed. He's shifty enough. He's not running like a 4.29. But I'm a big fan of McMillan. I'm a big fan of the offense he's walking into because it's as wide open as it could be. And Bryce Young, he's not walking into a Patrick Mahomes offense or something. He's not walking into Josh Allen. Bryce Young isn't a terrible quarterback. Is he outstanding? No. Does he possibly need an alpha to take the next step? Yeah, I would believe so. And I think that McMillan can be that guy. So I think off of a sheer volume play, you're drafting him as possibly your first flex player. If not, you've gone for onesie positions and you're really locking in a wide receiver 2 that's a young guy that has the potential to grow. I love it.
How do you feel about Jimmy Horn taking over the Thielen role? You think that's I don't think that happens this year, but
I don't think it happens this year. Jimmy Horn has definitely been making plays in camp, but he's also like 5'8", and I'd kind of want to see that with pads on more than just on air.
That would be tough for Bryce Young to see.
Yeah. We'll not see him at all. But,
I mean, yeah, I don't think, like you said, I don't think it's going to happen this year. That could happen next year.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I mean, you make a great point with Millen. I mean, you look at the round 6, the wide receivers, if you're going the wide receiver route in round 6, a lot of wide receivers are boom or bust. They have some high ceiling, Xavier Worthy, Travis Hunter, George Pickens. They're all going that round 6. The one thing they all probably don't have as much is the more likely opportunity to see a higher target share, and that's kind of why I like to pick with McMillan there, because out of all 4 of those guys, I could see him having 120, 130 targets a season as a rookie. It's just possible because of the way that the weapons on that Panthers offense are just not equipped to be star players at this point. Yes, Adam Thielen has had a great stretch so far being with the Panthers, but again, he's another year older at this point there.
34.
34. I just don't see that keeping up. That you bring the young, big play wide receiver in, it makes a ton of sense to having McMillan as a ceiling play. But again, if he doesn't hit that ceiling, it's not a great floor, more than likely, if he doesn't do well as a rookie. So, Kyle, anything to add on McMillan?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned sorry, Coach Tyler, you mentioned the pass attempts. And I've started doing that. I've done my projections for touchdowns and target shares, and one of the things I do for touchdowns as well is the total pass attempts on the team, and I have Bryce saying at 553 this week. I think you mentioned around 530.
Who's 530 if you extrapolated all of his
Yeah.
played games last year over 17 seasons.
So I think he has the chance to up that by at least 20 throws, and that's basically, I guess that maybe equates to one throw a game, but maybe even that's underselling it. That's maybe like an average range of outcomes. If they are encouraged to throw more because they have Tetairoa McMillan, maybe he does up that and gets closer to 600. That is definitely possible.
Jamie said Horn and Bryce need booster seats in the huddle.
I've seen some huddles where like a running back will like duck under, especially in the CFL. There's 12 players on the field instead of 11, so you see like sometimes the running back just stands in the middle of the huddle, but or not even stands, crouches down in the middle of the huddle, so they're just underneath where the quarterback's talking, so they can hear them perfectly, and lets everyone else have a chance to come in. Maybe I guess it doesn't really work if Bryce Young does that because everyone will be over top of him. I guess he looks up and yells maybe.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, McMillan is tied right now for my most rostered dynasty wide receiver from this rookie class. So I certainly, one of my takes with Hunter this year has been it's super risky to take him in redraft, but it's a lot safer to take him in dynasty. Just taking one, especially in a rookie draft, all he takes is one rookie pick. You just draft him when it's wherever you feel like you want to draft him at. I kind of feel a little bit similar with McMillan. Like it's a lot easier to get him in dynasty, but in redraft I do think, unlike those other guys that you mentioned, including Travis Hunter, not going to be number one target on the team. I think that's the likeliest range of outcomes.
Right.
Whereas with Travis Hunter, I mean, if you take him in dynasty, at some point in his career, he's going to be a dominant player. So you don't know if it's this year, you don't know if it's 3 years from now, but in dynasty, take him. You in theory have him for his whole career. So whatever year that is, you'll have him. In redraft, you're making the bet that it's this year. That's where it gets risky, without really knowing exactly how many snaps he's going to play. Take the risk that this is the year that he truly breaks out as a receiver. It might happen, but it's tough to do that. With McMillan, I think we're pretty confident that will happen. So yeah, I do like that as a sixth round pick, especially. Doubt he's going to be your wide receiver one, unless you've stacked with all the other great positions, like robust running back, early quarterback, early tight end. Maybe he's your wide receiver one. Maybe there's a bit more risk there, but other than that, it should be a complementary to whoever you're using.
Of course, absolutely. All right, moving on to my ceiling play right now. It's Jayden Reed. Wide receiver 26 last year. He's going right now in round 8 of ADP currently right now. And for me, I feel like Jayden Reed just kind of screams ceiling play. And there are definitely weeks in his game, even last year, where he exploded. Especially if everyone remembers, week 1 last year, he was amazing. Really, really shined on Friday Night Football there.
Touchdowns,
and then obviously touchdowns. Yeah, I mean he plays running back at times. You get him on the end around. He gets a good 40 yards on just one play, and he's done that a bunch of times last year. But again, last year I think everyone's expectations was higher for Jayden Reed after having a really strong rookie season. They expected him to take another level, and it just never happened, unfortunately, for him. And I think a big part of that had to do with the Panthers stuff. The Packers offense and the schemes they just kind of ran last year. And Jordan Love. Jordan Love got hurt week 1. Was he ever really back to normal the rest of the season? You don't really know that. I mean, you get hurt in week 1 of the season, you don't know if you're really going to be able to play all 17 games, and he didn't, obviously. And you saw later in the season, as the season went on, Jordan Reed's pass attempts just kind of fell. I mean, for at least 5 or 6 of his last 8 games, he had under 30 pass attempts. That's not really going to help a guy like Jayden Reed, see targets in an offense there, and it hurt his value overall, where he was just not playing very well, seeing minimal targets, finishing games with 24 yards, and that's kind of what you get out of him last year. Was there was a lot of poor games, but then those ceiling games are what attracts you to him in general. And right now he's kind of faded in the dynasty world. Jamie just said he took him in round 11 the Battle of the Sexes tournament. Like, he's just not being highly drafted right now. And yes, Matthew Golden got drafted there, but Jayden Reed's still going to have a big role in this offense. He is the primary slot wide receiver. He's going to be used in this offense there. That, you know, they just lost players in their secondary, which is Jazeera Alexander. So, like, this secondary is not going to be as good. I think the concept of them running the ball as much as they did last year, I don't expect that to be as strong of the case as this year with a healthy Jordan Love. Like, you paid him, you know, a lot of money to be your quarterback. They're going to end up throwing the ball a lot more. And I think Jayden Reed in that round 8 is, again, just in general, a great value. But you're going to see a lot of ceiling plays out of him. But in the same sense, there's going to be weeks where he has 26 yards on 2 catches, and that's what's going to frustrate you. But in round 8, that's, you know, we talked about, you know, Coach Childs mentioned before about, you know, a guy like, who was the first guy? I can't, Tyreek Hill going to round 3, that boomer bust play. Well, Jayden Reed is just the same thing, boomer bust play. You're getting him 5 rounds later. He may not be as consistent in terms of the upside each and every single week, but in round 8, that's when you can start taking shots and risks with your players. And him as a flex play, first guy off your bench, however you build your team, there's a lot of upside there with Jayden Reed. I couldn't say Jordan Reed. Jayden Reed. So he's my ceiling play for 2025 that you should be going out there to get, depending on how you build your team. So what do you guys boys think? Any thoughts on Jayden Reed?
Jordan Love, Jayden Reed, right? It's Jordan Love's top target, at least that's what we expect. But Coach Tyler, you were hesitant on Tyreek Hill, again, mentioning how early it was. Is, like, Reed going late enough that, like, this is where you want to accept that type of risk?
Yeah, I'll preface, I'm not a big Reed guy with the addition of Matthew Golden, but yeah, this is about that range where I'm really kind of starting to look boomer bust because, you know, round 8, if I've loaded up for the most part my roster, I'm looking for bench guys that have a chance to make an impact. And so, you know, Jayden Reed is either playing, if you're in a, you know, deeper format, as my, you know, second or third flex, or maybe my, you know, basically 6-man off the bench. I love that. Like, I love being able to have a boomer bust type guy as those type players that I'm, you know, throwing in on bye weeks, or I throw in when they have a great matchup.
So personally, it's funny how I took from Coach Steve's favorite team. He's a Dolphins fan. I am a Packers fan, so it's funny that Steve took my favorite team. So I expect Reed to be the most productive wide receiver on the Packers this year, lead them in fantasy points. Do you both believe that as well?
I will say I do believe that. I don't have it as, like, I'm not 99% confident, but I'm like 80 to 85% confident that Reed is going to be the leading guy on that team.
I really feel like Matthew Golden is going to be force-fed, not necessarily taking away the division that Jordan Love likes to give, but and there's a little bias in there. I've been watching Matthew Golden since he was a freshman at the University of Houston, and so kind of have a lot of love for the guy. Sad he went to UT, but I think they went out there and, you know, the Packers really made the point before and after the pick. We need to go out and get Jordan Love an alpha wide receiver 1. They spent the first round pick, I think maybe of my lifetime, on a wide receiver to go out and get Jordan Love his alpha. And so I don't see the reason why he wouldn't be, you know, at the end of the season, as we look at it, the number 1 in this offense in terms of the receivers.
It's 2002 the last time.
Okay, so I was alive for 2 years.
Man.
Jamie's mentioning. Okay, he's drafting Reed, also drafting Golden as well. And it's, I guess I just referenced what you were saying earlier about McMillan. I really like McMillan. A lot of his production profile marks in college. The one that was especially stood out was his receiving yards per team pass attempt. I'm getting a lot of stats from Peter Howard. Mm-hmm. And he looks at, like, career receiving yards per team pass attempt, but also breaks down to single season. And he's one of the very few receivers that's had multiple years above 3 yards per receiving yards per team pass attempt. So it's like the elite receivers will do that at points. Like we saw last year, Marvin Harrison and Neighbors both had one of those types of season in their outlet. McMillan just put it back-to-back years above 3. That's really rare to do. So there's some really key production metrics as to why McMillan wins as he did. My God, as a Packers fan, I really did not like this Matthew Golden pick. because his production is actually pretty awful, and it's one of the worst. I know Rahul Nataraj and Jamie and I co-hosts on the Dynasty Six Pack. He mentioned he's one of the worst first-round receivers in terms of production profile by certain metrics that we've had in, I think, at least since 2010. So we're talking like 15 years of data. Might be one of the worst first-round picks at receiver we've had, but I mean, they picked it not for his college production. They chose him for his traits and the speed, right? And if Jordan Love wants to go deep and target a deep threat that can get separation, in theory, that is where Matthew Golden's going to have most success. It's funny because I wonder if there is a disconnect between GM and coach, and maybe even GM and quarterback on terms of, I mean, that they apparently Reed's agents met with the team and like the GM assured him he's the number one receiver, but what does the GM have to say about that? I mean, that might honestly, I think that conversation had more to do with contract coming up. Reed, 2 years left on his rookie deal. He kind of wants an idea of, are you planning to pay me? Essentially, I think that's more what it was, because it's not really up to the GM who gets the most targets. That's really up to Jordan Love more than anyone, but certainly Matt LaFleur can influence that a lot more by who he puts on the field. I think the risk with Reed is always he just doesn't play enough snaps. He's only playing at 2/3 the snaps. Now the Packers love to use 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, so his sheer number of snaps is good. Then the times where they're not using that formation, he seems to be the one that gets left off the field. Is Matthew Golden going to come in and play a ton of snaps right away? If he is, then you might be right, Coach Tyler. Like, it might be Golden who is immediately better to. I don't think he's good enough. I think that's in spite of him being a first rounder, because that doesn't really matter to Love, right? If he can't really get open like he wants him to, even if he's fast, but can't get open to the spots he needs to at the timing he needs to, he'll still look at the better route runner in Romeo Doubs and target him a lot. Might see Golden be 3rd or even 4th on this team. I think that's definitely an outcome too. It's going to be wild to see what happens. Like, does Jordan Love like Matthew Golden? We're going to get a really good idea of that this year.
Can't wait. All right, let's move on to our floor plays, guys who are relatively consistent, may not have the same ceiling play style that these last 3 players had, but Kyle, we're going to start with you here, and your floor play is Evan Engram, tight end for the Denver Broncos. So why is he considered a floor play for you?
Funny, something we kind of hinted at was Brock Bowers being a risky pick in the 2nd round, but there's a lot of risk taking any early tight end. If they pay off, it's great, but if not, you really feel like you're still having to address that position later, and you're behind at other spots. So I think there's inherent risk to kind of taking any tight end early, and the reward off choosing to not take them is like, looking at ADP. And Mark Andrews is a late 7th rounder. I mean, even Kelsey is sometimes late 6th, early 7th round. Then you get Evan Engram and Njoku typically going in like the 8th round range. That's a great spot if you've waited a tight end to get any of those guys. I especially like Evan Engram. He's been a consistent target earner throughout his career. That happened immediately as a rookie with the Giants, and there was a couple of years there with the Giants where things were less than ideal. But then he came back and earned a ton of targets with the Jaguars, and that role seemed to continue to grow. Now he's going in a spot with the Broncos where they were really desperate for a tight end last year. So immediate team need of they need him as much as he needs to be on a team that gives him targets. So you can see why he signed there. It worked well for both. I expect Sutton and Engram will just dominate the targets. That's probably going to be 40, maybe 45% of the team targets are going to go to those two. Kind of similar to what we've seen with the Rams last couple of years with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. What we expect of Puka Nacua and Adams this year. I think it's again, maybe toned down in terms of total volume. Maybe you see Sean Payton still liking to run the ball a lot, and I think not one single running back is going to get a lot of targets, but the whole position will probably draw a ton of targets. Even that being said, though, the tight end has still earned a good role in the Payton offenses, even when running backs are producing. So I think based on Ingram's career up to this point, even for the fact that he's on a new team, he's going to a spot that historically has used tight ends, at least from a coaching perspective. We don't really have much on Bo Nix except for last year. But what we saw from Bo Nix is, okay, he targeted Sutton a lot. He went to the most talented player and gave him, I think it was 25% target share. So if Engram is truly as talented as you believe him to be, and he's shown, I think he easily is the number 2 target on that team and can get that 20% type of target share. And that's going to be a lot of similar production to what other tight ends are getting. And they're going in maybe the 5th round, 4th round, and you can get him in the 8th round. So I think it's a great floor for, Ingram's career has been limited by not having a big touchdown season. I think 7 might be his career high. He's someone you probably project around 4 or 5 touchdowns, but he's safe because you just expect him to get a ton of catches every week. So he's a really week-to-week floor safety, but also there's some year-to-year safety. I think we all expect him to finish as a tight end 1. The top 6, not so much, but you're also not drafting him to do that. He could just be, tight end 7 and get you just enough of a difference over the guys who are like tight end 15. That's well worth it at this price. 8th round. And I guess they had 8th round range here is your ADP.
Yeah, he had 6 his rookie season. Has never had more than 5 touchdowns in any season. So, but if they use him just like they did in Jacksonville the last few years, I mean, he was their underneath guy consistently as a safety blanket underneath for Trevor Lawrence, and I think they could do that with Bo Nix. I think he could be someone you're seeing 5 catches for 40 yards every single week, and that's consistency, and that's a floor of and PPR league. That's 9 points every single week there. He might not see 20-point games like Trey McBride or Brock Bowers are going to see probably a lot of weeks, but he's gonna be consistent across the board and offer you a good play. So I do like this one a lot. Coach Tyler, anything you want to add in real quick on Engram?
Yeah, I do like it. You talk about what the Broncos looked like last year. It was Cortland Sutton and then like Marvin Mims and Adam Troutman and all these Mims is a good returner, but all these guys are kind of throwaway players.
I'm going to look right now, but I think Javonte Williams might have been 2nd or 3rd out of the team.
I think he was.
He probably was. And that speaks a lot to what Bo Nix had to offer, what Bo Nix was
2nd.
Offered in terms of, hey, good
70 targets. Javonte Williams, number 2 on the team. And then there is Vele with 55, Troy Franklin with 53, Marvin Mims with 52. Right? So the way Engram can usually, I think we could pencil him in for 90, 100 targets. Like, it's way above everything. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's a great floor play. And I'm looking, I'm a big sleeper guy and looking sleeper ADP. He's going like tight end 18 right now. If he's healthy, he's not going to be the tight end 18.
Every time I've done a mock draft on sleeper, I easily just get him in this type of range, but because he's buried in the ADP. Sure.
Yeah. I don't know what, overall ADP for best ball and redraft and all the different leagues are. All the ESPN, I know ESPN's is wacky, but ESPN,
I know Fantasy Six-Pack we draw from a bunch of different sites. We take from all those different sites, compile it to one, and I think it was 8th round, just kind of like where I think you got this from Fantasy Pros, right, Steve?
Yeah.
It's usually a pretty reliable one, too. So.
Yeah. So if he's going there, I love the floor play because we don't know exactly what he's getting because he's not in Jacksonville anymore. But if he's the number 2 target and he's healthy, we know exactly what he's going to do, and that's going to be a consistent guy. Get, a couple touchdown boom weeks. Hopefully those numbers increase and he has the record year. But I think he's a great floor play, especially at a position that I know last year was atrocious, but it's so hard to guess because even if you're going after the top name guys, sometimes you have those terrible seasons.
Absolutely. And I think with Engram, and if you're looking for tight ends, I think you're going to be able to get a guy who has that just good floor play, but also I think there could be someone he could still finish top 5 as a tight end. And maybe it's not like a ceiling play every week, but it's just that consistency that he offers. And I think he's going to be that guy for Bo Nix that is underneath and offers that upside in terms of that sense, but gives you that floor every single week. So
feels like Engram and Njoku are these last tier. If you don't take one of those 2 in the 8th round and you've waited this long and you still choose to wait, don't force the issue in the 9th round and take Tucker Kraft. Really push it as late as you can. I was looking through just again our fancy 6-pack ADP today, and I saw Zach Ertz in the 12th or 13th round. You can truly wait really late at tight end, but once you get past I'd say even the top 3, with Kittle, McBride, and Bowers, I don't think Ingram's any different than any tight end 4 to Engram at tight end 8, let's say, or tight end 9. I really don't see much of a difference in that range. So within that span, you could really wait late. Engram or Njoku, I think it's the same principle. I really like both of them.
Absolutely. All right, moving over to our next floor play. We're going over to Coach Tyler, and it's Davante Adams, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. So, Coach Tyler, why is Davante Adams a floor play?
Yeah, it's like Kyle just was lobbing it up for me the entire show. I loved it. But Davante Adams is a floor play because he's just so consistent, right? Like, I mean, you have it down there, better offense. That Chet's offense last year was terrible. I know he was hyper targeted because he was with his best buddy, but he's going to a situation with, a great quarterback who, hopefully he's healthy. We'll see. Obviously, we know what training camp reports are saying right now. He's, day to day, they're taking their time with him. But I think that Davante Adams is one of the nicest receivers to get in round 4 because, I mean, you look at even the past couple years. Yeah, Puka Nacua has been a target hog in LA. Cooper Kupp played 12 games in 2023 and had 95 targets. Cooper Kupp last year, through all the chaos of injury and everything, played 12 games and had 100 targets. If I know I'm getting a wide receiver 2 who is going to get, at a minimum, 100 targets through 2/3 of the year, and he can stay on the field, then I love it, right? Like, I know that he's going to get the volume, and he's still, one of the best route runners in the league. People like to think because he's old, he's fallen off, or because the offense wasn't, overly spectacular last year that he's fallen off. He hasn't. He was just on the Jets. And if you're a Jets fan, I think you can attest to players aren't bad. They just play for the Jets. And so, I look at Davante Adams and, sometimes age scares you off. He's going to now another team to, try and revive a little bit, even though he had, he's had solid numbers the last couple of years trying to figure it out. But if I can pencil him in for 95 to 100 targets through 12 games, if I know that he can stay healthy and boost that number to, a 130, 140, especially with, Puka Nacua's had some injuries in his history. Puka Nacua struggled to get through last season. Puka Nacua was known for a couple big injuries in college. He's walking into an offense where any given week he could end up as, the wide receiver 1 for the team. And with how we've seen the wide receiver 1 for the team, whether it be Kupp or Puka, be targeted since McVay got there and Stafford got there, I want in on that, right? That's, you're talking about 10 to 14 targets easily. We've seen games where both Kupp and Nacua, separately, not the same game, but both of them have walked away with 20 target games. And we know that Davante Adams can handle the volume. He can handle the workload. I don't think he's taken a step back in terms of his play. And I think that being able to get someone of his caliber, even if he does fall as the, wide receiver 2 on the team, volume-wise, he might lose, maybe 10 to 20 targets from what he's used to. But also there's a chance he still retains the same target numbers, and Puka just also has the same target numbers. Like, the offense throws the ball. They're not scared to let it rip at all. It's how Stafford has won games his entire career. And so the fact that the Rams would go out and get Davante Adams to replace Cooper Kupp, I think it allows Puka to, work more into that slot where, he can play outside, but he plays really comfortable in that slot where McVay can move him around. But Davante Adams is still dominant on the outside. And he's walking into a great offense with a, fairly good when healthy quarterback. I just love the floor of being able to get him as, my wide receiver 2, or if I'm going, running back heavy and grab one of the early tight ends, this could be my wide receiver 1, and I'd feel confident in a consistency from his play.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'm not as sold on Davante Adams with the Rams right now. Sorry, Coach Tyler. I hate to go against you here, but I see him more of a ceiling play than a floor play, and it's just everything that's going on this offseason here. I feel like Davante Adams has always been a guy that has always commanded the targets in the offense. And there's not many seasons where we have like history of him with another elite wide receiver, especially in his later years. Obviously Garrett Wilson last year, but you kind of have to put a little asterisk on that because him and Rodgers have such an amazing connection. It's hard to compare that if it was Justin Fields this year or if they used Gardner Minshew in that Jets offense last year. Would Davante Adams still have that same floor that he had obviously with the Jets last year? That's something that concerns me. Matthew Stafford and Puka, I feel like have such a good connection already in their career just through 2 seasons. And I feel like that is something that won't always get interrupted all season long, where I see Adams having more of like some spike weeks here and there than consistency. And then again, if the Stafford injury has me really shaken on both these wide receivers, and Matthew Stafford's already kind of regressing in his career. Injuries have been kind of piling up, and if they had to turn to Jimmy G, I would not be thrilled about that for the Rams. But yeah, it's hard for me to get on Davante Adams in round 4 because I think, for me, I feel like it's more name value than anything else. That's kind of how I feel about Davante Adams. It's Davante Adams, but then I don't know if he has that same elite season as he's had for many years. That's kind of how I feel about it. But, Kyle, anything to add on Davante Adams?
Don't worry, Coach Tyler, I got you. Because redraft-wise, I have Davante Adams as my wide receiver 9. I actually think he's about to have a fantastic season. And I look at, Cooper Kupp, target dominator, Stafford's favorite target, but then Puka Nacua comes along and totally changes things. Kupp's target share, the 2 seasons with Nacua, 25.6% in 2023, and it actually went up to 26.2%. Less than the 30% seasons he had, 31.7%, for instance, in the year he got the Triple Crown and was the wide receiver 1 in fantasy by a long shot. So it wasn't quite to that production, but I think Adams can fit into that 25%. I mean, the Rams, and really, you said it, Tyler, Stafford's whole career. This isn't just a Rams thing. When it was Calvin Johnson and Golden Tate, well, most of the targets were going to those two. Like I've got 2 elite receivers. I'm going to find a way to on any play, I'm going to try and get them the ball. One of them is going to be the first read, and one will be the second read. And if the first read's not open, I go to the other guy. And so I have pretty good confidence that Adams is just going to continue to dominate targets like he has. You represent Tyler is that he's not. You still think there's no downplay of his play, and I think he wasn't this unreal athlete when he was drafted. He was a guy who knew how to get open. It's all technique based. His separation off the line of scrimmage is still one of the best in the league. So he can get open really quickly, and that's something that I think Stafford and him are. Once their timing is good, that's going to be a connection that works really well. But I think Adams is predictable in that he'll get open for that immediate target. So I think the way Stafford, as long as Adams is there with those breakfast film sessions, right? The way that those guys study, and if Adams wants to join those meetings too, I'm sure he's going to get a great connection with Stafford. But just the way he watches films, he's going to see that from Adams, and I think be willing to target him. He targeted Cooper Kupp last year as a true number 2 to Nacua, but again, I've got him at wide receiver 9. I've got him ahead of a lot of other teams' wide receiver 1s. I mean, I'm seeing his ADP late 3rd, but even if 3rd, 4th round, I mean, we talked about JSN, Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill. To me, I'm foregoing all of them and just taking Davante. I have that much confidence. So maybe there's some former Packers bias, but as you said, even on the Jets last year, he was still producing. That's a really awful situation. This is a great offense with a great offensive coordinator. Sure, we'll definitely utilize Adams. Now, I expect Puka will see time in the slot, Adams on the outside, and they'll reverse it. And Adams will go in the slot, Puka the outside. That's kind of what Matt LaFleur did with Adams. And I think Adams will recognize certain concepts in this offense because he's been in, other than the first years with Mike McCarthy, he's been in these McVay, Shanahan tree offenses. Matt LaFleur all those years. I think I can't remember who the offense coordinator was last year, but I believe that was someone from the former 49ers staff with Shanahan. So he hasn't had McVay yet, but he's had the 2 guys closely related to McVay, or at least one guy really closely related to McVay, another descendant of Shanahan. So I think he'll be able to come into this offense in a meeting. And I mean, to your point, Steve, I do think he might be, because part of his, I remember one season with the Packers, his floor, literally his worst game was 16 points per game. It was an unreal PPR season from him. I think it might have been 2021, so he didn't finish wide receiver 1 in spite of that incredible floor, because Cup had that floor, but also the ceiling. And Adams that year, I think every game was between 16 and like 29 points. He didn't have any 30-point weeks. It was consistently 100 yards and a touchdown, but never these like massive 3-touchdown games. That's where it could change with the Rams. It could be these games where, okay, Stafford sees something, he will give him 2-3 touchdowns in a game. But you're right, Steve, where the floor might not be as accustomed as what we're used to. So I'll try and be nice to both arguments and say I understand that, because he's historically been such a high floor receiver, but now he might transition in this Rams offense to be a high ceiling receiver, and where the weekly floor isn't as good. But I still think the yearly floor, at the end of the year, he's probably going to finish as a top 15 wide receiver pretty easily. So the yearly floor, I think, is, but the week-to-week floor, that we'll see in this new offense.
That's fair. I respect it. No hate on you, Coach Tyler. Moving on to our last floor play. For me, it was Alvin Kamara, guys. RB10 last year, currently going in round 4 range of ADP. And with Alvin Kamara, he's been part of that 2017 group where they've just been so consistent, even into their older ages, where they just can't seem to be stopped here. And I don't think that changes in 2025 here. I think the Saints offense got a little bit better in terms of the overall culture, offensive scheme. I mean, I think you looked at last year and things were like, they knew that their season was over. They knew it was. And Alvin Kamara still managed, despite how bad that Saints offense was last year, to basically average almost every single game, like 10 fantasy points per game. If I'm not mistaken, there might have been one game in the 14 games he played where he didn't at least get 10 fantasy points. And it kind of just shows the consistency that he offers. And the last few years now, he's kind of gotten his receptions and targets pushed back up, back to where they were when he was younger. Like the last 2 seasons, 86, 89. Again, he's missed a few games here and there due to injury, so that, again, take that as a hint of maybe he can't play 17 games, so how consistent can he be? But when he's on the field and playing, he's been consistent, and I don't see that the Saints have anyone in that backfield yet. Kendry Miller, and maybe will actually get a real chance. They did get a guy like I like in Devin Neal, but it's still Alvin Kamara's backfield, and especially in the receiving game, I don't see how that's changing. Taysom Hill is getting a little bit older, so if everyone's concerned about Taysom Hill and what's going on with him, I think he's still recovering from injury. And again, he's going to be like 37 this year. Like, I just don't see him seeing in the field as much as he used to. And I think Alvin Kamara, might be his last season with the Saints, so they're going to probably use him as best they can and run the offense through them. Again, they don't have a strong passing game where Chris Olave or Rashid, I can't speak tonight. Oh my God. Thank you very much. Neither one of those wide receivers can not miss the field. They've both been hurt still throughout their entire career. So Alvin Kamara is going to continue to be a top 2, top 3 target leader on the Saints team. So for me, I think he's just a very consistent option in round 4. Even if you go wide receiver heavy early, get your tight end, and then Alvin Kamara is your RB1, I'm still pretty happy with that because he's going to give you a consistent play all season long. So how do you guys feel about Alvin Kamara?
I mean, also scoring settings will depend. I mean, Jamie's talking about Kamara being 10th overall and Scott Fishbowl 15th. I think to your point of why he's a safe floor is because no matter the game script, his role is secure. He either, we're winning, he's going to get a ton of carries. We're losing, he's going to get a ton of targets. And so, like, he's one of those game script proof running backs. And those guys do tend to have a really high floor. And I think this is back to weekly, yearly floor. I mean, his yearly floor, pretty incredible. So 2 years ago in 2023, he was the running back 24. Every other year of his career, he's finished as the RB 20 or better, including several top 5 finishes early in his career. The Drew Brees offense, maybe that upside isn't quite there, but I think another top 20 season is almost guaranteed. It's really just injury, right? Like which is the case for any player to not do well is to get hurt. So
not having double-digit touchdowns in the back half of his career definitely doesn't help when he had him in the front half of his career.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, the 18 touchdown season isn't quite there anymore, but again, enough receptions. Should be some, double-digit touchdowns, I think, is even in a bad offense like his. I mean, he might have most of the team's touchdowns, but I think that's doable.
I think 5 and 5 is doable.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I like it. I really like it. Again, safe weekly floor, but also I think safe yearly floor. It's shown year over year. You talk about those 2017 backs, he might, other than McCaffrey, he might be the best. And he's probably been the most consistent. even though he doesn't have a 1,000-yard season, but just how many receptions he gets from a fantasy point standpoint, that's what we love. His height, I mean, he had an RB2 season. The consistently getting RB1 like McCaffrey isn't quite there, but maybe you've been happier because you never totally bust with Kamara on your team. Where some years, if you have McCaffrey, it's just a total wash of a season. Kamara's never done that. He's always giving you something pretty great and pretty usable to help you win championships.
Exactly. Coach Tyler, any final words?
Yeah, I love Alvin Kamara. I was one of the guys that had him on their team for the fantasy championships where he scored 6 touchdowns. Fell asleep on a car ride to go see family for Christmas and woke up to a fantasy championship. So it was awesome. But yeah, he just has such a repeatable role, right? I mean, this Saints offense, outside of the first 4 weeks last year, hadn't really been anything special in recent years, right? And you look at the past 2 years, right? I threw out the Cup numbers. He played 12 games and had 95 and 100 targets. Alvin Kamara, the running back, over the last 2 years played, 13 and 14 games and had 86 and 89 targets. So not even playing full seasons, he was almost at 90 targets as a running back. That role, like the same way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a foul merchant in the NBA, Alvin Kamara is a PPR merchant for anyone who can draft him. And if you're playing in a standard league, Alvin Kamara is probably useless to you, but fix yourself because you shouldn't be playing in a standard league as it is. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to love on this Saints offense. Obviously, we're hoping Chris Olave comes back from his concussions healthy and ready to go. You hope, Juwan Johnson or Taysom Hill have some boom games for you. Maybe Kendre Miller is healthier this season. Maybe the coaching staff actually likes him for once. But Kamara is going to be a, target hog. His lowest target number of his entire career is 67. And that's usually the peak for a good amount of receiving backs in the league that aren't solely receiving backs. But he is the number one in this offense. He is getting the first touches, the first receptions, everything. And so even with how bad the Saints are going to be, I think it's just going to be dump-off city for him. And you can ride your PPR value all the way to a championship on the back of, 100-something targets from Shuck or Rattler or whoever they throw back there to play quarterback.
I mean, here's one thing I've heard this offseason. We're just essentially erasing Tank Dell and Christian Watson. Okay, their ACL tears happened so late in the year that we're just assuming they're not going to play. I mean, Taysom Hill was like a early December, late November ACL tear. I mean, I'm essentially he's not in my projection. So I think of all the years, this is probably the least amount of a headache year that Hill's ever going to be for Kamara. Because I just don't think he's going to be on the field. And Taysom Hill's whole thing has been he's an incredible athlete. How good is he going to be? Probably not going to be the same Taysom Hill. So no. I could see it just being a complete write-off of a year from Hill, which, hey, that's less touchdown vulturing for Kamara. So maybe that's what helps him get to those double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we'll hopefully Alvin Kamara has at least 1 or 2 more seasons, at least 1 more season that can really help your fantasy season. So, but we are going to wrap things up for the night, guys. This was a really fun episode. Hopefully you guys who are listening got a lot of good information out of this to kind of help with your fantasy drafts. Kyle, my friend, always fun having you on as a guest. If there's anything you'd like to say or mention you guys got going on, I'll give you the floor.
So, in the comments, you've seen the great Jamie Pirogue joining, and he and I are co-host, actually, as well as Rahul Nataraj, and the 3 of us co-host Dynasty 6-Pack, a new adventure we've had with the Fantasy 6-Pack YouTube channel. So catch us live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We just talk Dynasty Fantasy Football year-round, and obviously with the season approaching, we are going to get to some 2025 specific topics. Finger red, number 1. Like red for Canadian, I guess. But yeah, we do have a mock draft show, another live show coming up later on the Fantasy 6-Pack Network, a different show, the Parlay FF. I guess part of the Canadian, I do have a red wall in my room. I mean, Tyler brought this up, so I have to defend it now. But man, as a Canadian, it feels great to know that right now the best basketball player in the world is a Canadian in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Free throw merchant or not, he won MVP and Finals MVP. Best basketball player in the world is a Canadian right now. So unreal season. Love to see that the Thunder won that. I actually, because of that, and he's now my favorite NBA player, I chose the Oklahoma City Thunder division in Scott Fish. That the championship the Thunder just won, and Gilgeous-Alexander and Lou Dort won championships for Canada. Well, maybe I'll win a Scott Fish Bowl championship. Check us out, Dynasty Six Pack, and on the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. And I mentioned the slot pick articles. I've got 106, 109, 112 articles coming out for Fantasy Six Pack. But honestly, we're kicking into high gear on Fantasy Six Pack because there's tons of redraft articles about to be released or have been released in the past week. So check out the Fantasy Six Pack website because there's a lot of great stuff.
Check it out, guys. And of course, Coach Tyler, anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, I'm sorry that finger red number 1. I guess that was an emoji that he tried to use that wouldn't go through, but that really just got me.
I love the band Finger 11. I don't know if that's what he's referencing, Finger 1-1, but yeah.
But yeah, y'all go check out dynastynerds.com. Me and Coach Steve talk about it every show. That's where we met. We both work over there with them. Lots of primers, lots of stuff getting you ready for your season in your redraft leagues. Lots of mock drafts going on over there. Lots of great articles coming out. Multiple tools for big dynasty and Devi guys like me. You got your dynasty GM over there. You got your dynasty film room. Coach Steve loves that I'm already looking at the 2026 guys. But yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds. Use code COACH when you get over there. Let them know that we sent you. And thank you guys for listening.
No, Jamie, we cannot see your emotes. I don't know why. Maybe it's this streaming system we're using. Nope, still can't see it. But yeah, guys, again, thank you for tuning in tonight on the Fantasy Coaches here. Whether you're listening live on our YouTube channel, watching Jamie put non-real emotes on our message page, or if you're listening not live, if you're listening live, you should be on our YouTube channel for sure. But if you're not listening live, you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. We appreciate you guys as well. Like I said, we do this for free. We don't get paid to do this. So we do this to help you guys have better fantasy knowledge, and hopefully that will help you guys win fantasy championships. We'll be back next Monday. We'll get into some ADP for the month of August here. This Thursday's football's on, guys. We are the clock is winding down to football season, so we hope you guys are ready to go. Thank you all for listening. Tune in until next time, everyone, and have a great one.